My name is Caroline Fairchild, and befitting of the title of this panel, I have a job that my parents do not understand. I work for LinkedIn. I'm the new economy editor, which means that I oversee our publishing platform and work with thought leaders to share their thoughts with our 440 million professionals around the world. We have spent this week at Milken discussing some of the biggest problems that are changing the future of mankind, and right at the tail end, we're going to pick up one of the most challenging. STEM is, if not the most talked about topic right now in education, the most buzzy. We know that more and more jobs in the future are going to require STEM skills. We know today that there are jobs that we cannot fill because there are not people with the skills that they need to fill them. Recently, LinkedIn actually came out with a survey that showed that some of the most sought after skills that employers are looking for right now include data analysis, cloud computing. But what we don't know, and what we will discuss here today, is exactly how are we going to fill these jobs and educate the next generation of workers. Today, only 16% of American high school seniors are proficient in math and even interested in pursuing a STEM education or career. On the panel with me are the leaders who are trying to figure this out, but in very different ways. They want to increase that percentage and also fix the growing skills gap that we're facing in this country. I'm going to briefly introduce them. Kimberly Bryant is the founder and executive director of Black Girls Code, a not-for-profit organization that focuses on providing tech education to African American girls ages 7 to 17. Brent Bushnell is the CEO of 2-Bit Circus, an LA-based experimental entertainment company that builds products and events that combine story and technology. Tom Khalil is the deputy director of policy within the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. And Stanley Litlow is the president of IBM International Foundation and a VP of Corporate Citizenship and Affairs at IBM. To begin, I'd like to actually challenge all of my panelists to, in one sentence, and one sentence only, no cheating, describe to me the biggest problem facing STEM education today. Kimberly, I'll start with you.
One sentence, okay, that doesn't count. There's estimated to be 1.4 million STEM-related jobs created in the next 5 years. And it's imperative, in order that we fill that STEM gap, that we have everyone available with a seat at the table, which means girls, which means students of color, and a really broad and diverse voice across our student population.
It's perceived as boring and only for nerds, so kids don't get excited about it and they don't go and do it.
We need to improve the number and quality of STEM teachers.
Number one, we need to improve the college graduation rates for young people. It's disastrously low, and we need to increase it dramatically. And number two, we must improve the skills of teachers to teach, especially math, but also science, beginning in the early grades.
So Stan, I'm going to start the topic with you. I think that IBM comes at this from a very interesting perspective because you guys actually need to employ these people with STEM skills. In your mind, do you think that our education system is evolving rapidly enough to keep up with the new skills that are wanted at IBM and throughout the workforce?
Well, clearly they're not, and I say that as not only an employee of the IBM company, but as a former deputy chancellor of schools for the city of New York, the largest school system in the United States. I think our education systems, and it's not all their fault, they have a hard time moving quickly to adapt to changes. So we focused a lot of attention in the school systems in the United States on high school graduation rates. And our school districts responded to that, and they improved their high school graduation rates. But a high school diploma is just simply not enough. So if we look at college readiness, we haven't made much progress on that score. In 1970, only 6% of low-income 24-year-olds had a college education. Nearly 50 years later, it only went to 9%. So we kept our eye on one ball, and that was not just our educators' fault, it's all of our fault. Circumstances dramatically changed, and now we need to change rapidly. And I don't think it's about pointing a finger at them and saying change. I think it's about all of us working together in a public-private partnership to be able to solve this problem. I've got some suggestions and ideas on how to do that, but it can't be about pointing fingers and say, you must change, because they're not going to respond in an effective way.
Right, and Tom, you hinted at this in your problem answer, but the White House is looking at this not from just a student perspective, but also a teacher perspective. How are the efforts within the White House going in terms of training teachers to effectively create the skills that we need in today's workforce?
Yeah, so through some good timing, the president had a major announcement on this yesterday. Yesterday was National Teacher Appreciation Day, although every day should be Teacher Appreciation Day. And he announced that an initiative that he launched in 2011, which is an effort to prepare and recruit 100,000 high-quality math and science teachers, that we had the public and private commitments lined up to achieve that goal. And to Stan's point, this is what the president calls an all-hands-on-deck effort. So it wasn't just the Department of Education, it was leading high-tech companies, it was the Carnegie Corporation who had the idea to create this external coalition. It was universities and nonprofits, philanthropists and foundations that are all working together. And it's helping to scale up models like UTeach, which is a program that started in UT Austin that allows undergraduates to get both a STEM degree and a teaching certificate and get early exposure to a classroom so they know before they complete the degree whether this is something that they want to do.
And Brent, while Tom's working within the traditional school system, you're creating some programs that are supplemental outside of it. Talk a little bit about what you're doing and why it's important.
Well, you know, when you're talking about experimental stuff, it's hard to Stan's point to, you know, just sort of by fiat make those changes, right? We can't treat this like normal startups because, you know, you're talking about a kid's third grade education, right? You can't sort of be wrong the way that startups can be wrong really quickly. So for experimental stuff, you start after school. It's sort of a great petri dish to test and build audience and see. And really the balance of power switches after school, you know? The kid is kind of a prisoner there, you know, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., right? But after school, all of a sudden they opt into the after school program, right? They want to be there. And so it will be a really particularly good test to make sure that they love it. And so we have a high-tech carnival, and so we use a bunch of big games with lasers and fire and robots and all sorts of interesting entertainment, and paired with a whole bunch of hands-on projects so kids can learn about those fundamental skills that we find important. Basic fundamentals of being an inventor, so electronics, programming, fabrication, design thinking, and creativity. And part of our model is to say, hey, this stuff is super fun. Like, let's appeal to what kids already like, music and fashion and games, and then sort of hijack that stuff to deliver the learning that we want them to have.
Tom, you have a follow-up? Are kids prisoners in our education
Well,
system right now?
I wanted to build on a point that he made, which is the importance of also looking at out-of-school and informal learning. And one of the things that has emerged recently that the president is a big fan of is the maker movement. That is, in the same way that we've democratized IT, we've gone from the mainframe to the mini to the PC to the supercomputer that fits in your pocket. The same thing is happening with respect to the tools that are necessary to design and make just about anything.
Yeah.
So if we
Show
can...
of hands, who here knows what the maker movement is? Okay.
Great. And the maker movement is so incredible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the kinds of tools that you can get access to now, you know, it used to take a PhD to operate a CAD machine, right? It was to do, you know, the sort of fundamental introduction to computer science is how to print the words "Hello World," and in assembly language, that's punishing, and 20 lines of memory registers. You know, your 6-year-old can do it in pictures on your iPad now. You know, I mean, that's a huge change. You can do CAD in your browser. You know, I mean, that's really, the tools are, you know, what used to be hard is now so easy that we really just need to rebrand what it means to be able to play with this stuff.
And identify things that are intrinsically motivating and fun for kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And connect them to what happens during the regular school day, so it's not, you have this one thing that goes from 9 until 3 that you don't like, and then you have this thing after school that you do like, and they don't connect the two things together in a way that kids can really use what is exciting to
Right.
improve their learning.
But Stan, I struggle with how to make that happen, right? Because, you know, I'm an engineer. I took like 4 years of calculus, and I love calculus, it's neat, but I haven't used it at all, you know, and I would have much rather to have learned like basic finance, you know, a shop class, first aid, you know, there's a whole bunch of things that, like, frankly, should have been the things that we were
Well, I
trained
can
with.
tell you from the standpoint of an employer that's looking to hire, you need problem-solving skills, you need writing skills, you need presentation skills.
Yeah.
There was a survey that was done of Fortune 500 companies, And they said 70% of their new hires lacked writing skills. And those weren't high school graduates, those were college graduates, people with master's degrees. So we need to improve those kinds of skills. And those are critically important. Now you can get kids interested and excited in improving their writing skills if they're actually solving a problem that might relate to what you're talking about. We'll talk a little bit later about the P-TECH program, but in the schools that we've created, the writing skills are actually part of the math program because kids are using their math skills to be able to create a business plan, to go in competition with Apple. And if you look around the room, in most of the math classes, if you went into an algebra class, you wouldn't see kids doing a lot of writing, but they learn that I need my math skills, but I also need to write because if I can't solve the problem, then I'm not going to get anywhere.
Right. Kimberly, why don't you talk about why you're focused on such a specific area of the population as it relates to the problems we've been discussing so far?
Well, for us, I think our focus is really on attacking this from a different angle and addressing the limited representation of women as well as women and students of color in the field of technology. When I went to school and received my degree in electrical engineering in the mid-'80s, it was a peak for women receiving degrees in computer science. So it was like 35% or so.
Wow.
Which really was not a lot. And it's, that's a third of the population at that time that was receiving that degree in bachelor's in computer science, but now it's even less. So it's like 12%. So we've seen this drastic decline from women being represented in the computer science industry at a time when the industry is growing exponentially. And if we look at that number for girls from these underrepresented communities, African American, Latino, Native American, it's 1 to 3%. And those are about the same numbers you see represented today in industry, from startup to large industry overall. So our focus is really to try to move that needle and address why women are not in the funnel any longer and why we have such a low representation at every place, as conceivable point along the pipeline, when it comes to both women as well as underrepresented minorities.
And the numbers kind of show, we've already hinted on some of them today in the panel, and there are more out there that say, women aren't interested in STEM. There are percentages, stats that show that. From the work that you're doing and the programs that you're putting on, what are you actually seeing in terms of the way that you're reimagining that statistic?
Well, I'm not sure that is a statistic, so I'm not sure where that number comes from because that's not correct. If you do a poll, there are polls and numbers that show that once you look at middle school girls, over half of them are actually interested in STEM. They're interested in technology up to about the point of time when they get ready to go into middle school. And by the time they get to high school, that number has plummeted to like 3% or something like that. So we're losing them in that period of once they start middle school and by the time they're getting ready to go into high school.
Now, is that a coolness thing? Is that a social, why
some of it is social. Middle school is interesting for girls as well as boys. But a lot of this unconscious bias and stereotype that girls are actually encountering from external sources tends to happen right around middle school. So right when they're starting to figure out the things that they like and the things that they're interested in, society and sometimes even their teachers and sometimes even their parents, unfortunately, are saying, no, that is not for you. You should go on this path. And so where you see more women going into medical science, more going into chemical science, you're not seeing girls following that same traditionally male-dominated path of going in technology because they're not seen as being welcome there. They don't see a place for them there. The images that they see do not show women in computer science. And if they do decide that this is something they like, they may go into a summer camp or a program like my daughter did, which is what led me to create Black Girls Code, where she's the only girl in a sea of middle school boys, which, for me, that's a little bit horrifying. But, imagine for girls, that they're trying to learn this new skill set. It's a very intimidating environment. So that is what my focus was, to kind of make that path for girls like my daughter, who's this heavy, still is a heavy gamer, make that an environment that she feels she has a place in, and creating this community of other girls that are interested in the same thing, and they are also gaining skills where they are very adept at doing them.
I think a sea of middle school boys is horrifying for everyone.
Yeah, probably.
Brent,
I think it's also the skills. I mean, we did a piece of data analytics at one community college in New York City, Queensborough Community College. And of the students with a high school diploma who registered in the STEM program, and if they were taking 2 remedial courses, one of them being math, 40% were girls, 99% dropped out before the end of the first semester.
99% of girls?
99% of all the students who were taking 2 remedial courses were gone before the end of the first semester. And 65% were gone within 6 weeks. So what that said is girls and boys with a high school diploma interested in STEM, if they're not college ready and they couldn't do the work, they were gone. They were all low income, they were overwhelmingly children of color, and some of them were interested in STEM, but they couldn't do the work because
Right.
they weren't prepared. They were sent out with a high school diploma to register in college, but they didn't have the support, the skills to be successful. And you know, if we want to increase the numbers, I agree 100% with the motivation part, but when we talk about the country as a whole, low-income students, especially children of color, especially boys and girls, we need to support them with the skills to be able to be successful.
One of the things we're working on and supporting with Google, who's been one of our partners, is a program that addresses this issue of the skill set, and not only just teaching them how to build a game or how to build a website, but also their program, which is called Google CS Edge, focuses also on the math skills and getting them that first level algebra before they get out of middle school. It's key because when you talk about what connects to what we're doing in an after school program to what they're doing in school, well, if they don't know algebra, at least now, I'm not saying they have to be a math major, but they do have to have some underlying foundation of algebra to build a good game. And that's one of the things that we saw in our programs, and the girls, when the light bulb went out for the girls, it was just, it was like a seminal moment when they realized they could not create a good game board to get their sprite from one set from the beginning to the end if they didn't know algebra.
But I would rather start with the game, and so that I have a reason to learn this stuff. I'll just never forget saying, why do I need to learn this, this formula or this thing? And the teacher's just like, so you can go to the next level of math, right? That's not an answer, you know? It's got to be for a reason, right? Math is a tool, and so you need like a reason to be doing it. The fact that we silo these things drives me nuts.
Right. Well, speaking of Google, Tom, you know, it's clear that Google has been a friend in terms of helping us with this STEM education problem and the skills gap, but some could also see them as a foe as they're taking away a lot of the talent from STEM education and bringing them in-house and out of our school system. Talk a little bit about that, given your past at UC Berkeley and what you're seeing in terms of how tech is perhaps creating a skills problem for our teachers.
Yeah, so first of all, a lot of our tech companies have been very involved in improving STEM education. I know the president has been a big fan of the program that Stan helps run at IBM. One of the issues that we're having is that there are certainly skills that are in very high demand right now in industry. A good example of that is the whole field of artificial intelligence and machine learning that has just taken off within. It's something that people have been working on since 1956, so it's a 60-year overnight success. And so one of the things that's happened is that a lot of the companies are hiring away the faculty members. So the concern that I have about that is that that may be eating our seed corn unless we have a conscious effort to ensure that we have qualified faculty. Then there will be no one left to teach the next generation. So I think that is an important issue to keep an eye on. But overall, it's very positive because it's really accelerating the rate at which ideas move from the university to the university research to the marketplace. So that's great. My only concern is if they hire away all the faculty members, and they're hiring away the grad students before they finish their PhDs as well, who will be around to teach the next generation. So that's something that I think companies have to keep an eye on.
And Stan, what are you finding in terms of staffing? Can you talk a little bit about the P-Tech program in New York and what you're finding in terms of being able to staff teachers for that program?
Well, first of all, we don't have a problem with finding the teachers because we provide a lot of help for the teachers if they're motivated to be able to get them through the program. The P-Tech program, the idea is to reinvent high school, leaving 9 to 12 behind and create an integrated 9 through 14 program where students will actually, in an integrated way, wind up with at least an associate's degree in applied science or computer science. And the way this is done is by integrating into the actual classroom work the workplace skills that are important for kids to be able to learn. So every course, if it's English or if it's math or if it's science, is all about problem solving. It's all about presentation. It's all about writing skills. And every student has a mentor. Every student has paid internships. Every student goes to workplace structured visits where they work in the workplace with people at IBM. And the results are they can actually start taking and passing their college courses starting in the 10th grade. Virtually all of the students are low income, virtually all students of color, and their success rates, for example, on the college courses, they take 34 college courses. 21 of them, 100% of the students got an A, B, or C. There's not another community college in the city of New York that has those kinds of numbers. 3% of the students got Fs. That's lower than Harvard or Yale or NYU or Columbia. So the students are succeeding. They're actually learning, and they understand why they're learning because they need the skills to be able to work. Now, 50% of the students who've now completed, some of them 1 or 2 years earlier than the 6-year schedule, take a job at IBM at $53,000 a year with a signing bonus. The other half take full scholarships to private colleges or public colleges, and the dropout rate is 0. It's open enrollment. Nobody's screening the kids. It's not a special entrance exam to get in. It's working for just the population that you're talking about. Now, in terms of the teachers, we support the teachers with additional skills. And one of the things that they've said consistently is a lot of the students who start coming out of the 8th grade don't have high-level math skills. They didn't do well in 7th or 8th grade math. So we started to think about what could we do to solve that problem. And maybe you've heard about the Watson technology, artificial intelligence winning the game show Jeopardy. But we started to figure out maybe you could create a teacher advisor on a mobile device that a teacher would be able to get access through verbal commands. I'm having trouble teaching 4th grade algebra. Can you help me? 4th grade, fractions. So Watson then plows the lesson plans, provides the lesson plan to the teacher, provides supports to the teacher. Do you need help with discipline? Are the English language learners raising their hands? Can I help you with anything else? And because it's artificial intelligence, it's a very personalized approach. The teacher can use it 24/7. It's hosted on a cloud. It's available on a mobile device, and we will be launching this before the end of this calendar year for free for every teacher in the United States. And maybe that will help prepare the students with the basic math skills that they need. And from the teacher standpoint, it's not going to ask them for the name, rank, and serial number, so they're not going to not want to use it because they think it's all about teacher evaluation. And it will be something done for the teachers.
Why don't you respond to that?
Well, yeah, I've just got a couple ideas. P-Tech is super cool, by the way. I've done a lot of research on it. I love it. And one of the things you said that I really like is paid internships, right? And apprenticeships are so powerful. So much of my interest in engineering came from being an intern and working with really passionate, awesome engineers. And at least in California, we have a big problem as it pertains to interns. There was a bunch of abuses by some big companies, and as a result, we overcorrected. And now, in order for me to bring interns on, one of two things have to happen. I have to pay them full minimum wage, or they have to be getting college credit for it. Now, both of those things are problematic, right? Because not only, for me to pay a kid who has no skills is a hard economic decision for us to make. But not only that, in order for them to really get meaningful learning out of it, I actually have to put a person who is, producing in this scenario. And so now I'm going to get less out of that person also. In the university side of getting the kid college credit, it's a real project to get a university to give you that, to sort of figure that out. You have to navigate it. Now, we did it. We happen to already have a great relationship at UCSD. We've got our own STEAM curriculum, so we put that time and effort in. But I bet 99% of other companies wouldn't do it. Now, we have a magical workshop in downtown LA. It's got nerds and games and tons of tools. It's like the coolest possible place for a kid to go and intern. And yet, it is really hard for us to bring those interns on. And I would really love a solution for how to, because I feel like apprenticeships is.
Well, I think
So
the
one thing I
the
wanted to add to
suggestion.
that before we jump into that, sorry Stanley, is that if we're looking at really diversifying the tech industry, which is important to me, I think we have to be clear about privilege and where privilege comes into that conversation. So for me to go into East Oakland, which is one of the lower income areas of Oakland, and tell a student that if you want to come and work at this great company and learn all about technology and be an intern, you're going to have to do that free. You're not going to get any money. How can I tell that to a kid that's probably also supporting his family? He's probably also supporting part of his educational expenses, his clothing, his transportation. So I think it is important that we look at it from the lens of privilege that it is. So me even as a college student, I had internships, I had work study, I worked in college, and I sent money home. So like most kids go to the post office to get a care package, no, my care package was going the other way. So it's important when we're looking at this conversation to understand that the ability to give these unpaid internships to students that actually need the funding to support their families is not the same conversation. So a kid that's going to probably be going to Stanford and his parents are paying for it, that's something they can do. A student of color, African American, Latino student, they cannot do that. They cannot take an unpaid internship. So I think as industry, and even as a startup myself, we pay our interns. That's just an expense I have to bear because I know that the students that I'm trying to reach cannot afford to go, even if it's a fantastic job opportunity, to go without and take 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks of summer out and not have any income coming behind
Now,
that.
how many
We
interns
pay
do you
the
take on?
interns $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And to get at the question of are they prepared for the internship, they start preparing 4 months before the summer internship. It's part of their
And that's
class,
part of P-TECH?
part of their classroom, it's part of the design. The internship projects are project-based projects. So they're preparing for it for a period of time. So when they show up, they know exactly what they're expected to do. So you don't want like an intern showing up and you have no idea and you're having to program
agree.
things.
Totally agree.
But the thing that's important from the private sector side, we're going to hire these kids. We're preparing them because we want to hire them. Because we don't want to be behind the 8 ball on the racial issue or the gender issue. We want to be able to hire the kids with the right skills. But if we wait for only those kids who finish college to offer them internships and programs, then you're competing with this one elite group.
Right.
If you start in the 9th grade, you're creating a feeder pattern. It's sort of like what people used to think about the apprenticeship model. They used to think that you had people that were being prepared over a period of time that you would hire and you wanted to share the cost because you got the benefit.
Right.
So we can get the same kind of benefit, but it doesn't have to be about a narrow job and a set of skills. It can be about career opportunities. And I will tell you, from our standpoint, we're going to wind up getting the population that we need, and it's going to protect us, and it's going to give us the skills that we need to be competitive.
And Brent, before you jump in, I mean, these sound like policy problems to me, Tom, so I'd be interested to hear how the White House is thinking about this.
Yeah, so the administration is a big fan of apprenticeship programs. It's something that Germany does a lot better than we do, and so it is something that the Department of Labor has been supporting. The other thing that we've been doing is a program called Tech Hire, which is about trying to increase the diversity of the tech workforce and fill some of these open jobs. Not all of the jobs requires a 4-year bachelor's degree in computer science from elite research universities. And so there's an effort that is now going on in up to 50 cities where you've got increased collaboration between the employers and the training providers. So the employers can articulate what the job openings are, and the training providers can provide those skills, sometimes in an accelerated way through something like a coding boot camp. There are nonprofit organizations. There's one that started in St. Louis that is doing paid apprenticeships that last for about 3 to 4 months, and that gives an employer an opportunity to figure out whether this is a worker that they want to hire in the long term, and reduces the risk from the point of view of the employer. And the nonprofit organization is doing some of the training. So I think we are beginning to see a lot of interesting models that are emerging that are helping to fill some of these open jobs, but also improve the diversity of the workforce. And that's a social justice issue. It's an economic issue, but it's also important because IT is having such a pervasive impact on our economy and our society. And if all of the design decisions are getting made by a very narrow slice of the population, then we're really going to be missing out.
Kimberly, what do you think about that in terms of its ability to help what you were talking about earlier?
I think those programs are definitely one of the bright spots on the horizon in terms of really opening up opportunities to create these internship and apprenticeship models. I think there needs to be more of them. I will hope to see that spread. I know it's only been like a year maybe since Tech Hire, maybe a little bit less since it really launched. So seeing more of those similar type initiatives kind of spread across the country, I think we'll really start to see some change. Yeah.
And a lot of what we've talked about today or hit on has to do with the fact that our current education system is very test-based, it's very outcome-based. You know, Brent, do you think that there are any infrastructures that we can put or policies that can be put into place to kind of bring some of the fun, the free learning that both your as well as Kimberly's program facilitates, bring that back into the classroom so it doesn't feel like such a, as we've talked about, disconnected conversation between skills and career and education?
Yeah, we should learn to mastery, right? It's ridiculous that we will push a kid through a class not having understood what the material is, because every moment they spend in that course after that is wasted time. And to borrow actually a phrase my dad uses, is there should be no grades and no grades. And that means no grades as in first, second, third, and no grades as in A, B, C, D, right? You know, we have something we call failing, right? And we have that F. That's bad. That's terrible. Failing is awesome. Failing is the most informative thing that can happen, and yet we have this really negative association with it. And so the fact that we will push a kid from first grade to second grade without having mastered something is really ridiculous. For me, a good example is a video game. Right? If you're playing Super Mario Brothers, you don't get to go to level 2 unless you understand level 1, right? If you don't know how to jump over pits and jump on Koopas, like, you don't get to go to level 2, right? And that should be the way that we do school.
I mean, Stan, I'd ask you to respond to that. I mean, in terms of IBM and its desire to hire people, do you want to hire people who have a bunch of Fs, or kind of how do you think about the current school system and what you're looking at and its fallacies in terms of how it's showing you that someone is career ready?
Well, what we know is kids are not career ready. What we know is that the completion rates in community colleges for children of color who are low income is in a single digit. That's not acceptable, so we've got to do better. I think we need to change how we provide tests, but I'm not up for giving up on tests. I'm not up for giving up on standards. I'm not up for giving up on the importance of teaching kids the content, or having an expectation that some kids can't achieve because of their zip code or because of their income level. So I think we need to do things a lot differently. How you test, we can do a lot of work on that. How you give students the opportunity to improve their learning. But I think if we start off...
But why is the test important? Because
the test is important because you've got to be able to evaluate and assess when you've got a group of kids who needs your help and who doesn't need your help, and how are you going to move this thing forward?
But what if it was about accomplishments instead of test results?
Well, you can build into your testing system, not tests alone, testing as part of a whole range of other ways that you assess and evaluate skills. But testing is a part of it. And if the test is able to help you to evaluate a kid's performance, then you know what to do with them in the next year. The teacher knows what their problems were in terms of moving them ahead. I'm not up for giving up on the fact that we do not do well overall in the United States in terms of our educational performance. And
But
as
if
I
a kid
said,
could make a robot, like, wouldn't implicit in that be that they had the skills necessary to make the robot?
Well,
like I would much rather see
that
a
would be good,
portfolio.
but what if that kid would like to become a doctor? What if that kid would like to become a lawyer? What if that kid would like to become
So they could demonstrate in their
work for the
portfolio.
White House, or would like to work, for LinkedIn, or would like to work for IBM?
They would demonstrate their accomplishments in a different capacity. So maybe they're
Listen, I think we ought to count very markedly a particular kind of skill of what you've been able to do, along with being able to evaluate how well you're performing and what other needs you have. The idea that we can give up completely on testing, I think, is a big mistake. I really do.
And
I think that the school systems and we in the United States did a very, very poor job explaining why standards are too low and they have to get better, and why we need teachers to help us to be able to do that. But to give up it entirely, I think, is a huge mistake. And I think it gets back to this business about this is all of our problem. You talked earlier about computer science. How is computer science developed? In 1946, IBM and Columbia University developed the academic discipline computer science. It was a partnership between a private company and educators. People don't teach it the same way that they did, but it got off the ground because of this deep understanding that a company had a need for people with skills. Educators understood that it was going to be an important skill leading to the growth of the second half of the 20th century. And we got together and we agreed to do things differently. And sometimes you need to really be able to understand the size and scale of the problem to be able to get everybody on board and doing it differently.
Tom, did you want to respond?
Yeah, so I definitely think that there's a lot of room for innovation in how we do assessment. So for example, people have been doing work on something called evidence-centered design, which is where you say, what is it that we want a student to learn? What would constitute evidence of mastery? And what types of activities would generate that evidence?
Yeah.
And I think that, and there's some also been some really interesting work on something called stealth assessment. So for example, if someone gets to level 60 on World of Warcraft, we don't then say, we want you to take a paper and pencil test to demonstrate that you're good at World of Warcraft. Completion is strong evidence of mastery.
Yeah.
But to Stan's point, I don't think that we can give up on the notion of accountability, because we have schools that are dropout factories. And we can't just say, we can't just throw accountability overboard. We have to have some way of measuring which schools are doing a good job and which need.
So I would say, remember the badging program, the MacArthur badging thing? What does anybody know sort of how that's gone? Like what's happened with it? Is it working in certain places and not in others? Is that about the right way to think about it?
That's the right way, and I think that there are a variety of different badging programs, and they're more successful than unsuccessful. I think it is a good way to assess and evaluate a skill and then recognize
Right.
it in a particular kind
But
of way.
badges, certificates, degrees, they are only as valuable as how the marketplace treats
Exactly.
them. So, I mean, let's talk to Kimberly. What does that look like to you in terms of the girls who complete your programs? How is that treated in the marketplace?
Well, we don't necessarily utilize any particular badging program. It's more of a process of making sure we're getting the girls access to the skill sets and the various technologies that we're teaching. So we're very much so, our theory of change is to get them through a traditional educational path. We're just doing it in an after-school setting. So everything we're doing, from game design to mobile app development, is to get them back on this traditional path that will eventually lead them into going into a computer science program at a university.
Are you tying two standards at the time that they're doing that during the school day?
We do not. So we very much focus in an after-school format and doesn't tie into any of the work they're doing in the classroom, but it's to get them back on that track so that they can go through APCS by the time they get to 11th or 12th grade, maybe 10th. So that will be the marker for hopefully going into a CS educational program and a 2-year or 4-year college, et cetera. So it's being able to start them out very young at 6 or 7 with little skills that relate into design thinking, computational thinking, and a gradually increase the, I would say, the level of complexity of those skills as they get older so they can get back on that path and then go into college and major in computer science. Yeah.
Stan and Tom, I was actually speaking with John Donovan of AT&T yesterday about the efforts that AT&T is doing to reskill their workforce. There's tons of talk of badges. They have programs in-house for their current employees to learn new tech skills. And he said that he's working with other private employers to try and figure out what those equivalents mean in-house. So is this the future? Is this, every employer is going to have their own certification, badging, schooling program in order to create the skills that you said they need in order for their workforce to be successful?
No, I don't think so. I think we can all get together and determine what those entry-level workplace skills are. And I think we have to look at a couple of the things that we've got in place at a national level that we need to change. We fund what we used to call vocational education and now call career and technical education with over $1 billion. We send it out to school districts and states all around the United States on a per capita basis. It's not based upon what you're teaching. It's not based upon labor market information. It's not based upon the link to post-secondary education. So if you got that money to do cosmetology last year, you get it the same way to do cosmetology this year. If you did it to do programs that help kids learn coding skills and technical skills, there's no incentive for a school district to do that. There's a movement going on right now with help from the White House, in the Congress, and in the Senate to reauthorize that legislation and change it so that the money doesn't go down to do the same old, but that $1 billion or more will be spent with priority for where the labor market demonstrates real jobs are at high wages, experiential education, linked to post-secondary education, and some metric for performance. And that's something that doesn't have a Democrat or Republican name on it. It's a good thing to do. The second thing is we have a federal program, another $1 billion. It's called the Federal College Work-Study Program. You probably have heard of it. So if a student can't pay their tuition, they can get a job to be able to help pay their tuition. But that job is on campus, in the library, in the cafeteria. That job could be a paid internship. It could be credit bearing. You could take that $1 billion and the other $1 billion under the career and technical education, and that's not new money. That's $2 billion, and you could shape it in the way that we're talking about now. And then you would be going back to the educators to say, we're not asking you to do something new and different with no resources. We've got ways to help you do it.
I want to leave time for questions, so while you guys are getting those ready, we're going to do the same fun game that we did when we started the panel. One sentence, the solution to our STEM education problem and the skills gap. I'm going to, one sentence.
Layup. All right.
I'm going to start with Stan this time.
Pass the federal legislation that's going to change career and technical education. Do it this year.
Implement the 100K in 10 effort to prepare and recruit 100,000 high-quality math and science teachers by 2021, which the president talked about yesterday.
Create a format for apprenticeships and internships for every high school kid in the U.S.
Fund programs that specifically focus on girls and students of color, and make computer science, at least an entry-level computer science course, as a graduation requirement for high school.
Great. Do you have any questions right up here in front?
Hi, my name is Doug Mellinger. It's a, over the many decades that I've been around this education, just hear so many of the same things over and over again, unfortunately. And, one of the things that I've seen is that you've got, especially in the K-5 an incredible number of teachers who are teaching courses that they have absolutely no background in, or sometimes even passion about. And so I'm hoping that this program not just recruits new people, but starts to deal with getting people who are supposed to be igniting the flame actually in a position to ignite the flame. When you look at when they get to high school, where they're really starting to get hopefully prepared to go towards a career, there's programs out there. We keep reinventing the wheels, and there are ones that exist out there that can be scaled. The vast majority of nonprofits shouldn't even exist because they just don't have scale, can't move the dial. But going around the world, looking at things like the Davidson Institute that the Weitzman Institute created over in Israel, that basically takes high school kids for 2 to 3 days a week for half a day and put them into a shared high school. If you look at Tel Aviv, every high school kid goes to one place
Sure.
for half a day,
So the
couple
question?
times. So the question is, what are we doing to actually scale these programs versus just recreating the wheels?
So there is a movement called evidence-based policy, and the goal is to use evidence where it exists and to build it where it doesn't. And the way that you build evidence is that you rigorously evaluate programs to show whether they work, using, where possible, a randomized controlled trial. So an example is there's a Department of Education program that provides small grants for new ideas worth trying, medium-sized grants to validate promising approaches, and large grants to scale things up that are working. So when the P-TECH program starts generating results, then what's happening is that mayors are calling Stan and saying, hey, Stan, I would like a P-TECH program in Chicago, not just because it's getting good press, but because it has results. So we have to create a culture of evidence so that if there are programs that are working, that we're devoting more resources to them.
Also, I think when you have the example of success, you have to build the scale-up strategy in before you think it's going to build it into the model. Because I think one of the things in education, and I say this as a former educator, is somebody will say that this is a great school. Why don't you do that? And they'll say, well, that's on 32nd Street. We're on 23rd Street. That has nothing to do with me. Or that's a K-3 school. We're a K-4 school. So you build into the model a way to replicate it from the beginning. Don't start off with thinking you're going to create a model and everybody will want to do it, because there's no evidence that that's going to happen. So with leadership at the top and a plan to scale it without spending more money, without seeking regulatory change, without doing things that will inhibit the replication of it, then you've got a chance to do the things you're talking about.
I see a lot of
Actually,
hands.
if I could just throw in one thing, Doug, also look at the STEM Funders Network. They're identifying what they call communities of practice. So cities that do a good job as a result of multiple different stakeholders, nonprofits, the local school system and whatnot, and then replicating that across their network.
Hi, I'm Gloria Kondrup, and I'm the Executive Director of the new Hoffman-Smilkin Center for Typography and Language at Art Center College of Design. This is a very privileged art and design school, but I have to say the concept of STEM education to me seems to be not integrating itself with all fields of discipline. The concept of, you keep saying computer technology, or IT, instead of thinking perhaps the integration of what you're trying to do with skills is a language-based skill. That don't call it science, don't call it technology, call it essential language that should be taught along with A, B, C, and D. And I'd like to hear your opinion about that.
I think that the labeling of it is as important as how you do it. And I think, when we started off with this idea of STEM, it was, for particular kinds of careers. And now those skills are important across career. So I don't know when we'll change people's thinking and call it STEAM or call it something else. But I think it's more about how you do it than how you sort of label it. And I think the young people are interested in learning something that's connected to the rest of their life and a career and the skills that they're going to need. And if you can make that work for them, then I think you can get them interested in it, and you can get the professionals in the system interested in delivering on it.
I think it's just as imperative as you're learning language. This is the new language.
Sure. Other questions?
Hi, my name is Precious Baskin, and I'm with Global Girl Media. We are a nonprofit based in LA, and we like to give impoverished girls in certain communities the opportunity to do media and technology and broadcasting. So I'm actually in high school still, and as I'm learning and as I'm growing, I actually have lost kind of a love for science and not technology, because as you see, I'm still here, but one thing that I noticed is I know in the 80s when Reagan was the president, he let a lot of people from a whole bunch of different countries in, and they are brilliant. They're doctors, they're scientists, they're part of our community now. But I don't see them because they're part of a machine. And how can they're part of the machine, they're behind the scenes. They're not my teachers, they're not gonna be my professors, they're not the business leaders, not the leaders. So as we're going forward, as you're trying to bring these programs into high schools, are you also going to try to provide programs for these people to go higher? Do you want them to be engineers, or do you want them to be directors of engineering? Do you want them to be professors? Do you want them to be on the board of people who are bringing education towards us children?
I think we just need passionate, excited kids, right? Because the second if you are excited about engineering, there is no shortage of awesome things, right? US First Robotics and Maker Faire, and oh my God, to be a 13-year-old today, there's more cool tools and toys than possible. And so really, if we can get them to the point where they're working in industry, they'll work their way up, and we can just let that happen. But really, it's about getting them just to the starting line. We don't even have them there.
So for us at Black Girls Code, we're very, very particular about making sure that the girls are not just becoming an engineer, but becoming an industry leader. So we talk about that. So even with my own daughter, when we first started this journey, she just wanted to be video game tester. That was her ultimate goal in life, was to be a video game tester, get these games. So she went from that to learning to code and being like, well, I really want to be a video game creator, to now, as she's a high school junior and about to go to college, her career thing now says that she wants to be an industry owner, a business owner. She wants to own her own company.
She wants to be a video game tycoon.
Exactly. She sees it. She sees the future, and it is rich. But she definitely has changed, and that's what we try to do in the program. It's great if they just want to go in industry and become an engineer, but we really see an importance of them becoming the voices of technology and becoming a leader, even if they don't go into the field, if they go into another field of politics or become a teacher. We want their voices to be a voice of leadership and sort of setting that path, because we know that's where the real change is going to happen, when not just then we have more women coding, but when we have more women that are actually running these companies. Yeah.
Remember one more question? Two more? If it's quick.
So I'm from Chicago, and when you mentioned Chicago, and I'm at Northwestern, where we have a number of programs throughout the Chicago area, and one of the challenges that we've seen is that we can have all these programs and partnerships, but the parents aren't linked in, and because, pardon the pun, and because
I got you. I got it.
I didn't get it until I said it. Slow. Because they're not involved, we see tremendous dropout of the kids. And sort of our tagline is the 8-year-old is not going to be the change agent for a family.
They could be.
They aren't.
They could be, but we'll talk. I'll let you finish the question first.
How do you involve the parents?
Yeah.
So I haven't heard any conversations about this. How do you involve the parents? And for some of these kids, it's the larger community that they're involved with. It's not just the family.
Well, we have a P-Tech school in the south side of Chicago, Sarah E. Good Academy. And to get the parents involved, we ran evening workshops for the parents on financial skills to help them, job skills to help them get jobs. And instead of having limited amount of parental engagement and involvement on the parent association, now they have a pretty robust involvement. And I think it wasn't actually all that hard to be able to do. Now, to bring that kind of a thing to scale involves lots of other companies. Right now in the P-TECH model, we're in 6 states with about 110 other companies. And it's not just large companies. You can do it, but you can't just make an assumption about parents. You have to help engage them and bring them in. And they will provide the role, but maybe not everything. That's why I think that the industry role models through mentoring and paid internships are important. But I think we can't make an assumption that the parents, if they don't show up, they're not interested. We have to do things to engage them.
Kimberly, what about you? What are you seeing?
So for us, we actually do similar to what Stanley mentioned, is that we have parent workshops that run alongside of the workshops that we do with our girls. And sometimes the whole workshop is a parent-daughter workshop. So the one we're doing at the end of May in the Bay Area is a maker workshop that we're doing Internet of Things and circuits, and it's a parent and daughter workshop for girls and their parents 6 to 12. And one thing that we're seeing is that, to Stanley's point, is that the parents are very interested in learning, but they're interested in learning what their kids are learning, understanding it so that they can support them, and possibly that kid may become a change agent. We have a student that started with BGC when she was like 10. She started to really dive into learning the code. She's a single parent household, and now she started to go learn Ruby on Rails, Java with her mom. So they're going to these classes, not even in BGC. They found other classes. Now the mom is like Oracle certified and everything.
Awesome.
That can teach in our classes. But that was because first the interest was with the student, and she brought the mother along on this journey with her. So a child can become a change agent, and we find that the parents are very interested in both learning to support their kids as well as learning where they're sending their kids into this field, and so build programs that support them along that path.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more right here.
Well, whenever I hear one of these panels, I keep jumping out of my skin because the overfunding of teachers over technology. I mean, the toxicity of our schools is strictly, the classroom is an obsolete model. And throwing more labor at it or what have you doesn't work. We've got to get more technology into the process of schools. The classroom is batch processing our kids, and that isn't model that's 100 years old, and it's not working today for our kids. And so we've got to get more. Why is there not more money focused on technology in the schools and less on teachers? When if efficacy of that, I mean, it's like in the pre-agrarian area, why don't we just put in more horses instead of buying a
Sure.
tractor?
Tom, you want to tackle that?
So I guess I'm not sure about the premise that just dumping a bunch more technology in the classroom will make a difference. I think it's but I think we have to figure out how to use it, right? So I think that's the issue. There has not been yet a sort of a large number of convincing demonstrations at scale about technology having a transformative impact.
Where does it break down?
Proof of better efficacy.
Yeah,
Where
well,
I'll talk to you later.
Great.
I'm told that we have to wrap. If I were you guys, I'd follow these two out of the room. Thank you so much for our discussion. I really appreciate it. Thank you.